Welcome. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another exciting edition of Solar Now in the Future with its economic impact on Black America. And I'm your host, Ronald Bethay. And you know, if you join us on a regular basis, that the slogan for this show, if there's power in numbers, then the Positive Change Purchasing Corporate LLC captures that power for your financial benefit. The Positive Change Purchasing Cooperative serves as an economic blueprint for renewable energy companies, both large and small, along with increasing market share for African and African American owned renewable energy companies to address the high energy costs at our historically Black colleges and universities. to utilize Black-owned farmlands and HBCU campuses to develop capacity and initiatives for renewable energy projects to bring down the underemployment of young African-American men and women locally, nationally, and throughout the diaspora. Also to educate the African-American community locally and nationally about the economic impacts of climate change and the need for environmental education through Black Talk radio programs such as Solar Now and the Future with its economic impact on Black America. Ladies and gentlemen, you know if you join us on a regular basis that the slogan for this show, if there's power in numbers, then the positive change purchased incorporated captured that power for your financial benefit. As many of you know, ladies and gentlemen, we have been broadcasting in the past over the platform of Blog Talk Radio. We're now broadcasting over our YouTube podcast radio television network. That's the Positive Change PC radio television podcast network. We don't have a scheduled guest today, ladies and gentlemen, but we do have a very, very interesting show that we are going to be talking to you today about. And we're going to look at things that are happening as it relates to legislation on the Hill that has been introduced by the Honorable Congresswoman Shontel Brown of Ohio and Congressman Jamie Raskin of Montgomery County, Maryland. Now, in doing so, their legislation and the bill that they've introduced, H.R. 989, was introduced because we have a recent executive order which was signed by Trump, which in fact rescinded the 1964 Civil Rights Equal Employment Opportunity, which was the executive order 11246, which Johnson signed in 1964, and it went into effect in 1965. This is a press release which was put out by Congressman Shontel Brown's office on February the 13th of this year, 2025. Washington, D.C., Congressman Shontel Brown of Ohio 11th District and Congressman Jamie Raskin, Maryland 8th Congressional District, have introduced legislation to codify critical anti-discrimination protections revoked by the Trump last month. On January 21st, President Trump issued an executive order revoking the Equal Employment Opportunities Executive Order 11246, a bedrock of the civil rights protections first issued by President Lyndon Johnson in 1965. The Equal Employment Opportunity Order prohibited employment discrimination by federal contractors on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, sexual origin, gender, identity, or national origins. Brown and Raskin's legislation is H.R. 989, would codify the Equal Employment Opportunities Executive Order law, restoring the importance of the anti-discrimination protections for Americans employed by federal contractors, which represent 1/3 of our nation's. We're talking about 1/3 of our nation's contractors. Trump's reckless rollback of the Equal Employment Opportunities Executive Order, and as I've indicated, H.R. 989 would codify the Equal Employment Opportunity Executive Order into federal law, restoring the importance of discrimination protections for American employed by federal contractors, which represent 1/3 of the national workforce. To date, 25 members of the House have co-sponsored this legislation. Now, we want to dig into this subject matter, ladies and gentlemen. We will, in the very, very near future, as we work through the issues with these various platforms, will we also be providing a platform, and we plan to have a number of guests come in and weigh in on this. But I had the privilege of last evening attending here in Washington, D.C., the Greater Washington Clean Cities Collaboration Group grand opening of their new offices at 899 North Capitol Street here in Washington, D.C. Um, this organization is headed by a very dynamic leadership of Mr. Antoine Thompson and his lovely wife. They have been doing a bang-up job as it relates to working around getting grants for EV charging infrastructure. That is their focus. They focus on working with helping municipalities, states, and counties and cities, and specifically targeting those underserved communities in terms of getting electrification, EV charging electrification into the marketplace in our underserved communities. And the subject matter last night surrounded this exact executive order that we're talking about in this matter, and the freeze of the funding through the 140016 and 14008 and executive order 13985. Now, executive order 14016 was the executive order which brought into motion what we would refer to as the Invest in America agenda through the Biden and Harris administration. And under that, we had Build Back Better, which we had the Biden and Harris administration being able to bring into the U.S. over $1 billion in private investment from the private sector. But from the public sector, it also brought into existence billions of dollars of federal tax credits to, in fact, assist those private entities and to incentivize them to come in to help rebuild our roads, highways, and bridges and infrastructure in this country. Also, we are looking at the Inflation Reduction Act. The Inflation Reduction Act are all parts of the bill 14008, which deals with the combating climate change in the U.S. domestically and abroad, and the role that the U.S. would play on the world scene. Now, believe it or not, as I refer to him as COVID 45 plus 2 with 34 felony counts looking straight at you, most of you refer to him as your president, Donald Trump. By him signing these rash of illegal executive orders, which froze $96.7 billion in federal grant contracts, which the our departments of EPA, DOE, HUD across the federal agencies have entered into, and these contracts have been executed by the U.S. government, and there's $96.7 billion in funding that needs to be released. So, with that being said, our conversations last night with most of the companies that are members in their of the Greater Washington Clean Cities collaboration surrounding around these things, because everything has been frozen, put on hold until this funding is released. So, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, let's look at the history of this bill and this executive order 11246. And let's discuss what's the difference between the codification of a bill and an executive order being signed by the president, which is very, very, very needed as it relates to educating all communities, not just the African and African American community, because most people thought that the Equal Employment Opportunities Act was a law. No, it was not a law. It was an executive order that President Johnson signed, and for 60 years, Republican and Democratic presidents alike have agreed that the taxpayers' money should bankroll workforce discrimination. President Trump's reckless rollback of the equal opportunity protections turns back the clock on 6 decades of civil rights progress, said Congressman Brown. My new bill restores critical safeguards for contracting employees, ensuring that they don't face illegal discrimination in the hiring process and the workforce. Federal contractors who receive taxpayers' funds and execute government programs should set the standard for equal opportunity. We will not stand by while this administration undermines the rights of women, Black Americans, marginalized communities. The fight for fairness in the workforce is far from over. Now, if you have not been living under a rock, you know that Trump has bought in his billionaire club with Elon Musk being the point man for an agency that was not established by Congress called DOSE, which is supposed to be cutting waste and fraud from the government. Now, he had the audacity to go on public television with a chainsaw after he had sent out a letter telling people that they needed to respond and tell him and tell him 5 things that they got accomplished the past week. And if they did not respond to him, they would be taken, this would be taken as a resignation from their jobs. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, the reason why I brought up last evening's event is because we have some very, very visionary people in our African American communities and young leadership. And Mr. Thompson, Antoine Thompson, is one of those individuals. Almost 2 years ago, me and him started having conversations around the fact that we needed to get the Department of Energy's offices of EJE to look at getting their offices codified, so if there would be a change in administration because of the election, it would be much easier to protect what was already in the law by Congress rather than an executive order, because the next president can come in and do exactly what Donald Trump did, which was rescind the executive order 14008 13985. 13985 created diversity, equity, inclusion across all 6 federal agencies. So these are the things of concern that we have attempted to address here at the Positive Change Purchasing Cooperative LLC by contacting Congressman Shontel Brown and Raskin's office, asking for an opportunity to meet with some of their legislative staff directors and talk about amending this bill, HR 989, to include those executive orders 140016, 14008, 13985, because those executive orders would deal with environmental justice, DEI, as well as combating climate change here in the US and abroad. That needs to be codified into law. Now, this information that I'm sharing with you went all the way to the White House while the Biden and Harris administration was in office. But very, very unfortunately, and I take the same position as an individual who I am a great supporter of and fan of Mr. Roland Martin, who is the founder of the Great Black Star Network, which you can subscribe to his network, but he's been beating the drum around these issues for almost 2 years with brother Ali. I'm struggling with his last name at this point in time, and I won't change it. But his brother Ali, who worked at the Santiago, who works for forestry, but he previously was at the Department of Environmental Protection Agency. And we know that we had an outstanding African American who just stepped down under the Biden and Harris administration, Mr. Michael Regan, who is a North Carolina A&T alumnus, who I think did an exceptional job while serving at the EPA in the capacity as the director of the Environmental Protection Agency. When we began to look at what is going on, and we began to look at Trump by flooding the zone with dozens of illegal executive actions, outrageous suppression of media, vicious scapegoating, rhetoric, and nonstop administration echoes President Trump has tried to lose his directive of the rollback of the civil rights era anti-discrimination protections into a crowd of noise, as Congressman Raskin stated, but we are paying close attention and taking actions on behalf of the people. And I'm proud to join my friend and Representative Brown in introducing this critical legislation codifying President Lyndon B. Johnson executive order ensuring equal opportunities for Americans employed in the U.S. government contracting space. This is very, very important, ladies and gentlemen. This was the buzz. This was the conversation at last night's event at the reception of the Greater Washington Clean Cities collaboration uh, opening of their new offices here in Washington, D.C. People are not standing by idly while these things are going on. We also aware, as of yesterday, a federal judge here in Washington, D.C. issued a stay indicating that the Trump administration must release the $96.7 billion that has been frozen. And we have a very, very, I feel, dangerous individual in the running the office of OMP in Russell Vogt. Now, before Congress went out, there was an all-night legislative hearing held on the Hill about this gentleman taking this position again. He is one of the authors of Project 2025. If you are not familiar with Project 25, which is put out by the Heritage Foundation, it is a recipe for disaster as it relates to African Americans and other minority communities of color in this country, as they are wreaking havoc with the so-called this new budget that they have come up with. And on yesterday, it got the first portion of the 2025 appropriations bill got through the House, but it has to go to the Senate. And we're hoping that our leadership, and when I say our leadership, as a registered independent, I am not registered as a Democrat for years, that our legislative body, and specific those Republicans, will grow some spine and they will roll back these draconian cuts that will be impacting Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, SNAP programs for the most needy individuals in our country. And as we begin to look at the application of this executive order and many of these executive orders which Trump has signed into law, is very, very clear that since 1965, Department of Labor's Office of Federal Contract Compliance Programs, the OFCC, has monitored and enforced federal contractors' compliance with non-discrimination requirements under this executive order 11246. The OFCCP office also has had the authority to review statistical employment data and to investigate cases and the impact on discrimination by contractors by rescinding this executive order 11246. The Trump administration has removed a significant tool to enforce anti-discrimination laws. Now, when this gentleman took oath, he took the oath to protect and serve the Constitution. But the Constitution is by the people and for the people. And nothing's going to impact him more than individuals who are from my home state, which is considered a red state, my home state of South Carolina. And for example, giving you a breakdown on how this is impacting the red states The Biden and Harris administration put billions of dollars in development into these red states as it relates to them being able to benefit from the Inflation Reduction Act and the Build Back Better. Now, this is a very, very good example as to what I'm speaking to. Central Electric Power Cooperative awarded $500 million for clean energy projects for my home state of South Carolina. And if you don't know who Central is, it's a major player in the energy industry. Next to the PJM, which is made up of 13 states and the District of Columbia, the PJM impacts 65 million consumers of electricity in 13 states and the District of Columbia. North Carolina, Virginia, the District, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Delaware, New York, Ohio, parts of Illinois, all are part of the PJM region. Well, when you're talking about the Central Electric Power Cooperative, which has been awarded clean energy, $500 million, this is a release from that was put out in South Carolina by the Central Electric Cooperative on January 16th of 2025. The power supplier for South Carolina, 19 electric cooperatives have secured $500 million in federal support as an array of clean energy projects needed to meet Palmetto State's growing energy needs, saving a significant amount of money from the rural cooperatives members across the state. Columbia-based Central Power Cooperative, which will receive $442 million in grants, more than $57.8 million in zero interest loans through Empowering the Rural America ERA program. The funding will reimburse up to 25% of Central's costs for power purchase agreements that will deliver nearly 700 megawatts of nuclear power for solar and battery storage capacity to more than 900,000 cooperative accounts across 46 South Carolina counties. This is major, ladies and gentlemen. The carbon-free energy will reduce the Central's annual greenhouse gas by more than 2.2 million tons, equivalent to removing 480,000 gasoline-powered cars from the roads, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture's administration program. Now, this money is frozen, ladies and gentlemen, and I can go on and on citing other examples because Central does not just cover, as I indicate, South Carolina. It covers South Carolina, state of Georgia, state of Florida, state of Alabama, state of Louisiana, state of Mississippi. They are all part of the central of their market demographics that they provide and control and regulate the cost of energy, the type of energy that's going to be used, and how these energy sources will be utilized in those market demographics. So there's a great deal at stake here, ladies and gentlemen, as we are looking at this example of what is going on in my home state of South Carolina. And South Carolina is rapid growth has come with greater challenges for the power grid, but central and other state electric co-ops are always looking for creative solutions to minimize costs to the consumer. Well, I think that the cooperative should have been beating the drum before the election around these issues. But these are some of the entities that can be reached out to get support and put pressure on those Republican representatives like Lindsey Graham, Tim Scott, who are supporting a losing formula as it relates to providing access to this new green economy that the Biden and Harris administration bought into fruition. And President Biden, it was the biggest accomplishment of his administration. Well, we know the story. COVID 45 plus 2 with 34 felony counts looking straight at you have decided they want to derail this progress for the people. And the people need to be educated around what is at stake. What is at stake, ladies and gentlemen? Let's make it clear. They had one of the biggest fiascos in the country around the nuclear power plant, which was scheduled to come online in Congressman Clydeburn's district, the Santee nuclear power plant. And they had some of the highest construction overrides. And after there was almost 8 consecutive rate hikes in the state, the churches and the people got together and said, we can't take this no more. And the whole public service commission, a number of them went to jail for fraud. So I think we need to start to look at what is really going on as it relates to who is pulling the strings behind the Trump administration. And I think that our regulatory control entities such as PJM, such as Central, they are playing a significant role with who they bankroll for political office. And we need to connect the dots. I have on my website, if you go to our website, you can go to our video gallery, and there is a documentary there that's entitled, Why Are My Electric Bills So Damn High? And I would express and I'm asking people to take the time to go to our website at positivechangepc.com and go to our video gallery and look at that video and other videos that are impacting on programs such as a pilot program which was started here in Washington, D.C. in 2011 by a very dear friend of mine, Mr. Ted Trayview, who is the former director of the D.C. Sustainable Utility known as the DCSEU, who now serves on the D.C. Public Service Commission. And Darrell Green, the NFL Hall of Famer with the burgundy and gold, uh, and Mr. Mark Davis of WDC Solar, who started the Solar for All pilot, working with the previous director of the Department of Energy and Environment, Mr. Tommy Wells, who served on the city council here in Washington for years. And when he left the council, he was appointed director of the Washington, D.C.'s Department of Energy and Environment, DOEE. And they have formulated a green bank, and they've been working around a, a number of these issues. But I would say that their biggest accomplishments has been the piloting of the Solar for All program, which was picked up by the Biden and Harris administration, and under the leadership of Michael Regan at EPA, under the Greenhouse Gas Initiative, which $27 billion was put in that. $7 billion of that funding was targeted to take the Solar for All program nationally. And there were 60 grantees that were awarded that $7 billion, and all of that funding is also frozen. So as we began to look across the horizon and look across the board, people can now maybe can see why and how important it is for us to be able to come on this platform and educate the American people about what is actually going on in the energy marketplace, and specifically in the green energy economy. Now, there has been a number of explosions in the renewable energy sector. And as I've indicated, I'm going to sort of give you a breakdown as it goes back to the Central Electric Power Cooperative award of $500 million. Projects, the Catawba Nuclear Power Station, 150 megawatt projects would be receiving $464,331, with $57,840,264 zero interest loans to get this nuclear power plant back online. The Lambert 1 solar farm, which is a 72.5 megawatt project, which is a very large solar project, received $19,431,483. The Lambert 2 solar farm, which is a 72.5 megawatt project, also would be receiving $19,431,483 in grant funding. The Georgetown Solar Farm, which is a 50 megawatt project, would be receiving $13,184,336. Additional solar for the state, 200 megawatts, $68,970,782. Battery storage, 150 megawatts, would be receiving $14,439,332 for a grand total of 695 megawatts of power totaling $442,158,738. And as I indicated, zero interest loans, 75,841,041,264. This is the kind of vision President Biden had and what he's put into place. Now, by freezing the funding for these projects, they're all being put in jeopardy. You can go and you'll find information about Central Power Electric. It's a nonprofit organization. The transparent cooperative headquarters is in Columbia, South Carolina. Central has 19 member cooperatives, provide more than 2 million South Carolinians across 46 counties, 70% of the Palmetto State's landmass. South Carolina independent members owned electric cooperative formed Central in 1948. Now, we're not talking about something that just came around. They've been around. Now, the real co-ops of America had played a major role in Trump's election. But they also, the benefits of what the Biden-Harris administration has put forth. So with that being said, we need to make sure that the people understand these things, the American people, and how it comes down to knocking out some of these fees on your gas, water, natural gas, water, and electric bill. For example, the governor of Pennsylvania, Governor Joseph Shapiro, last December filed a lawsuit with the Federal Regulatory Commission here in Washington, D.C. because here in the PJM region, which has one of the worst track records with suppressing renewable energy projects, there are over 3,000 projects that need to be brought online. The PJM has suppressed and stopped wind permitting for wind, and there's questions around those issues on solar projects, but they have been making lousy decisions. But they were positioning themselves to hit 65 million ratepayers in the 13 states with a $21 billion rate increase because they wanted to bring an 800% cost increase for natural gas into play. And Governor Shapiro, by him taking the leadership in this and being backstopped by the other 13 governors of the states that make up the PJM, who also had their state attorney generals to file a class action to stop this action. We're not going to get hit with this $21 billion rate hike come June 1 of 2025 of this year. These are the things that we need to be having discussions about, but people would love to talk about something about what's going on with a personality, or a rapper, or an athlete. Hey, I'm glad that everybody gets a chance to entertain themselves, but it's no fun when you're looking at the gun, when the rabbit's got the gun, and you got to sign the check every month to pay your gas and electric and water bills. Because the Renewable Portfolio Standard legislation, which the House and Senate passed, said by this year, every state had to put in to place how the states are going to combat climate change, and most of the legislative bodies are simply just passing these costs back to the consumer in forms of fees on your gas, water, and electric bill. And if you think I'm lying, check your electric bill, your water bill, and your gas bill. We try to make it plain here on this platform of Solar Now and the Future with its economic impact on Black America. Now, we've been beating the drum, ladies and gentlemen, for quite some time around these issues. Now, we need to take a slight pause for the clause, and we're going to sort of change a few to another of the subject matter surrounding these same issues. But we think that these are the issues of discussion that we need to be having, especially in the African American community, because, like I said, we're already being stretched to the limit. And with these so-called draconian cuts to Social Security, I want to make it very, very plain. Because I am of the baby boomer era, but I've been one of those who've been fighting on the front line forever, which goes back to my roots in South Carolina and the Orangeburg massacre that took place in 1968, where I landed in Orangeburg the following year, and it was still a hot tomato there. And there were so many things going on. But that's another discussion, ladies and gentlemen. As I said, we want to take a slight pause for the cause. So here we are on our platform, Solar Now and the Future, with its economic impact on Black America. We'll be right back after we take this musical interlude. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the airways of Solar Now and the Future with its economic impact on Black America. And I'm your host, Ronald Bethea. And you know, if you join us on a regular basis, the slogan for this show, if there's power in numbers, then the Positive Change Purchasing Cooperative LLC captures that power for your financial benefit. The Positive Change Purchasing Cooperative LLC serves as an economic blueprint for renewable energy companies, both large and small, along with increasing market share for African and African American renewable energy companies to address the high energy costs at our historically Black colleges and universities, to utilize Black-owned farmlands and HBCU campuses to develop capacity initiatives for renewable energy projects. Also, to utilize Black-owned farmlands and HBCU campuses, as I've indicated, to develop capacity and initiatives to bring down the underemployment of young African and African American men and women locally, nationally, and throughout the diaspora. Also to educate the African and African American community about the economic impacts of climate change and the need for environmental education through Black Talk Radio programs such as Solar Now and the Future with its economic impact on Black America. Ladies and gentlemen, I need your help. I need you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. And I also need you to go to our website and make a donation. We are more than talking. We are walking it, ladies and gentlemen. I listen to Fact Talk radio formats all day long. I listen to Brother Carl Nelson's show. I've been a guest on his show numerous times. I've listened to Reverend Al Sharp with the National Action Network, which I am a member of that organization. I listen to people call in all day long. The minute when I call in and I'm talking about anything related to energy and energy related issues, it seems to fall on deaf ears. But let me make it plain. Everything starts with energy. Everything ends with energy. And when you begin to look at what was called inflation, which COVID 45 plus 2 with 34 felony counts looking straight at you, ran out on and said, well, I'm going to bring down inflation the first day. The cost of, now he's began to do the moonwalk, like Michael Jackson used to do the moonwalk backwards, backtracking, because he knows that that's not going to happen. And when you start making these draconian cuts and you are not paying attention to who you firing, and you get rid of all of the chicken inspectors who go into these highly active poultry processing facilities in South Carolina and Georgia, and you don't have those inspectors, and you get a breakout of flu and viruses in that bird population, you can go right now to Costco's and a dozen eggs are $13 a dozen. So for all you American folk who think that your choice was a good choice, I take issue with that. Everybody had a problem. Now it's to the highest bidder. But let me be clear. This is just the beginning, and we're in quarter one. We got 4 quarters because he's got 4 years, and each year is a quarter in the game. And this is called the game of survival. And you can better bet. You better strap up and strap on your helmet and your pads, because this is going to be one hell of a football game. And it's more back, and it's going to have a bigger impact than the Super Bowl. They talk about 180 million people viewed the Super Bowl. Well, they better be viewing and getting on board with solar now in the future with its economic impact on Black America. Because it ain't going to just impact Black America. It's going to impact you. Make no mistake about this, ladies and gentlemen. As the cost of energy rises, the cost of everything rises. When you begin to talk about so-called third world countries, the only reason why those countries on the motherland in Africa, with all of the raw materials and minerals that they need to do whatever they need to do, they cannot process that because they don't have the energy infrastructure in order to go into the manufacturing phases of manufacturing and producing, from the raw material to the finished product. That is why they are being referred to as third world countries, because they don't have the ability to compete in the manufacturing sector. President Biden has attempted through the Inflation Reduction Act and Build Back Better legislation to bring back manufacturing to the U.S. We know CHIPS Act, billions of dollars. All of this funding, these things are tied in and related. So, ladies and gentlemen, we'll come to the end of our show. Once again, this show is brought to you by the Positive Change Purchasing Cooperative, LLC. You can log on to our website at positivechangepc.com. Click on our news and events tab. We have not inserted a paywall as of yet, but we're going to be forced to do that because we're going to have to try to find a way to mitigate our costs as it relates to bringing you this program on a weekly basis. But as I said, and until next week, we always tell people to go in peace because we don't want you to meet us back here. We want you to beat us back here for another exciting edition of Solar Now and the Future with its economic impact on Black America. So next week, we say, go in peace.